Hey everyone, Todd from Sideshow Effects once again, and in this video I'm going to give you a complete tour of our new Stream Deck XL color panel for Davinci Resolve. This is the Windows edition. Now with this pack you'll be able to control almost every parameter in Davinci Resolve's color page. I'm going to start off by introducing you to the layout that we've got here, getting into applying raw presets, then we can get into doing some color work with the primaries. We'll touch on log. I'll demonstrate how our HDR page is laid out and how it works. We'll look at RGB Mixer. We'll get into all the controls of curves. We'll take a look at Color Warper. We'll dive into Qualifier and all the adjustments we can make there. We'll control a power window and all of its parameters. We'll show access to the tracker controls. We'll take a look at the new feature of Magic Mask. We'll show control over blur and key, and we'll be able to adjust the sizing with this profile. And we'll also demonstrate Dolby Vision. And we'll take a look at printer lights. And lastly, we'll dive into our custom page. And this allows you to program buttons to any variable parameter you like in the color room and even in the inspector or Fairlight controls. So this is for the Stream Deck XL device. We also have this exact same pack available for the Stream Deck Plus, the new Stream Deck Plus with the dials. Now I'm going to be demonstrating the studio version of this pack. Included in the pack is a non-studio, or if you're running the free version of Davinci, we call it the non-studio, we have a profile dedicated to that. And it's identical to what I'm going to be displaying here, except you don't have access to the Dolby Vision or the Magic Mask. So at this point, I am going to assume that you have gone through the installation process, following through the PDF included in the pack, or perhaps you've taken a look at our installation video and followed along. So here's the main page. This lays out the main navigation for where we want to go and what is available to us. So along the left hand side here we have, this is our load panel. This is what we will press at the beginning of every one of our color sessions so that we can launch the script. Along the bottom are some common node controls, adding a serial, adding a parallel, and a little bit of node navigation here. Now our blue keys here, this whole section, these are the different color panes inside the color page of Davinci, and each one of these will open up the controls for each one of those panes. And we'll do that in just a second, but I'm just going to explain the rest of these here. These are also folders. These get us into different sections that we're going to explore momentarily. A handy reset grade is up here, and the reset UI. And if you've watched the installation video, or you've read through the PDF, you will know that pressing the reset UI just aligns things where we need them to be. So here we are in the color page of Davinci. So my first clip in the timeline is a red raw file. So what we're going to do at the very beginning, we want to set the shot up with the raw controls. So we go into camera raw here, and you'll see that changes our profile on the Stream Deck. It doesn't change anything in Davinci. That's what the green button is here for, because that will then launch the camera raw pane in Davinci. And from here, because we have a red raw file, we'll go into the red raw controls, and now we have all the controls available to us here. So quickly, if I want to change the color temperature, I can press color temperature, and I can immediately start adjusting the dial down here to change the temperature up and down. I can also click on decode quality to get myself over here, and I can adjust any one of these parameters and click enter, and it will enter that parameter for me. Now we can bounce back, we can go into tint, and we can start adjusting our tint here. If you want to get in for the ultimate control over your raw files, these controls are here for you to use. We can jump to our next clip, and this is a Blackmagic RAW file. So if we go into Blackmagic RAW, same sort of thing as with red, same controls. Want to adjust saturation, we can immediately start boosting our saturation, changing the exposure, changing the tint, etc. You can make all your adjustments here. Back out. Next clip over is an RE RAW. Same thing, move into RE RAW. We have all those controls available to us as well. Now we're ready to start a primary correction. We'll jump into primaries, and that opens up the profile for us, and then hitting the green key, that jumps us into the primary pane. So the first thing we want to do here, we want to widen out our lift and our gain. So I go to lift and I bring the lift down. Go to gain, start raising the gain up. And you can see with the controls here, you don't need to leave your hands off the Stream Deck. However, there is an easier way. And for a few dollars, you can add in a shuttle device here. I'll just shift this over, and with a shuttle device, clicking on any one of these, if I say lift, and I can just dial the lift down, I can go to gain, raise the gain up, start adjusting gamma by pressing gamma. I can then switch over and start increasing my saturation, for example. So I can do a color boost, start boosting up the color, go to saturation. I'm increasing saturation quite a bit. I can even wind it like this if I want to. Bring my saturation up a lot. I go back to lift, drop it down, get a little more contrast, gain, pop out our highlights a little bit. Very easy to make quick adjustments. Now, as you can see, we have all the parameters on the profile available to us that we see in the DaVinci color pane. In addition, we have the color wheels. So if we go to lift and we want to start affecting the color in the shadows of our image using the color wheel, we can do that with our Stream Deck alone. So we can start adjusting. I'm making a diagonal. I can just go down, up, left, right, or I can do a combination that allows me to do a diagonal. And I can use the shuttle key, and that will let me go left and right. Now let me just swap this out for a trackball. I'll bring my trackball in here. Now when I click on any one of these, let's go back to lift here. I can use this as a very, very easy control to move around. And I can bounce around very quickly using my lift, gamma, gain adjustments, offset, to get where I need to go very, very quickly using a trackball. So you don't have to rely on the controls on the Stream Deck. You can use the Stream Deck to get yourself to where you want to go and then make your adjustments just with the two hands. You don't need to touch the mouse. You can look at your image all the time. Once you get used to where things are and how they're laid out, you can just keep your eyes on your monitor and make your adjustments this way. And these trackballs are very inexpensive. They're probably about 50 bucks. The shuttle, which I'll bring back into the shot here, the shuttle is about 30 bucks. So for a minimal investment, you can really increase the amount of control you have. Now you don't need to use these. It works just fine just on the Stream Deck device itself using these navigation keys here. Now I've just redesigned my desktop here just because I want to show you some variables that we can have with our adjustments using some modifiers with our keyboard. So I'll use the example of our primaries here, and this is true no matter what parameter you're adjusting, but we'll select tint, for example, and of course, as we showed, adjusting the tint value gives us that amount of control. Now if I was to add in the Alt modifier key and hold that down while I make that same adjustment, you can now see our integers go up and down in a lot finer of amount. So it's a finer adjustment that you can make. Now the same is true if you're using a shuttle. Using a shuttle wheel, you can see that that's the amount of change that takes place when rotating the shuttle. Holding down Alt and rotating, you can see we have a much finer adjustment. Now holding down Control while making this adjustment is a much more coarse adjustment. So letting go of Control, hold Control, you can see we're going a lot more coarse. So you can add that in the modifier keys to help you to get where you need to go. In addition, going over to our color wheels here, we showed you that As you're aware, you can use your left and right and your up and down, and then you can use two at the same time to take it in a diagonal direction wherever you need to go. And we showed you how you can adjust with a shuttle as well, but we were only demonstrated that you could go left and right, but you can go vertical with the shuttle if you hold down the shift key. Now you've got a vertical adjustment. Horizontal, and hold shift and go vertical with the shuttle. So I encourage you to experiment with that, and you can see what works best for you when you're trying to fine-tune the adjustment that you need. Now we also have the color bars available to us, so we can affect the individual channels. Gamma, we can increase the red gamma, green gain. Once again, you can use your trackball or your shuttle to get where you need to go. And as always, you have a reset. So I can quickly get back to where I want to go. Very quickly make an adjustment. All right, so we can go back out, and the next one over we can go into log, and log is pretty much laid out the same way as the primaries, but just in log color space. So clicking on shadow, we can increase our shadow, bring our highlights way up, gamma, and we also have the log color bars as well. Now we can get into HDR, and we'll get into we'll open the HDR color pane. Now, if you're familiar with HDR, there are 7 color wheels available to you. The global is always on. The first 3 color wheels will change depending on our navigation that you see along the top here. And we can control that navigation through our top keys here. So you can see we have black, dark, and shadow, and then we can move 1 over, 2 over, 3 over to reveal all of the color wheels that are available to us. Now, the assignment of our color wheel controls here, global always stays global, so if I hit this, I'm going to be adjusting the global offset. But HDR1 is going to allow me to control the first color wheel, whatever happens to be currently selected. So we can see light is currently selected, so moving my trackball around will move light, but if I move a couple over, now HDR1 is controlling dark. And I'm now affecting the dark values. Same thing here. And the same is true with exposure and saturation, depending on which color wheel is currently assigned in the navigation. And of course we have our temperature. We can adjust the temperature, and adjust the tint, etc. All these are available to you. We can reset this grade, and we can also get into the zone graphs. And clicking here gives us the controls for the zone graph. Okay. Now we can get into RGB Mixer, and once again clicking on the green key once you're in the profile opens up the correct pane in Davinci, allowing us to control the red, green, and blue of each of the individual channels. So if we want to change the red of the green output, the blue of the blue output, red of the blue output, all these work in the same way. Back out, we'll take a look at curves next. We're currently in the custom curves section indicated by this key here, and we can get in and we can start controlling any one of these parameters to start adjusting our values. Now if I make a few points on this, now by controlling any one of these values, I can then start adjusting our image as we need. We have control over the individual parts of the color curve, or the Y. We can go to Y completely and do it that way, and of course we can still use the Stream Deck as the controller. It's pretty responsive. We can jump over to hue versus hue, go into the color points, and let's say we want to select the blue parts of the image. So I'm going to make a point, and then just by selecting that point and start adjusting the value, you see I'm raising up the hue. I'm adjusting the hue of that part of the color spectrum. I can also make another point and start raising that one as well. You find that a little more response if we go into, say, a shuttle wheel control. We can start adjusting more. Trackball gives us even more control here. So if we jump over to, say, hue versus saturation, we're going to adjust the saturation of particular colors and go into the color points there, select the blue as well, and then you see we have even more control over the saturation. So we can drop out the saturation in those blues, take the different part of the blue value and completely drop out the saturation of blues in this image. And of course, the shuttle wheel and the Stream Deck operate in the same way. So you can explore all the different options. They're all here for you. Hue versus luminance, same sort of control you get, but adjusting the luminance value of that color point. Luminance versus saturation, saturation, and saturation versus luminance. They're all here, and all the color points are accessible. All right, now we can get into Color Warper. Pressing the Color Warper pane, we can start affecting very specific parts of our color spectrum in this shot and starting to warp and move it around. Now we have the tools available up here. We can get right into adjusting a range, and by using our dial we can expand or contract a range in a certain area. And then by selecting hue, for example, we can start warping those colors, of course using our trackball as well, using our shuttle. We can access those controls as well. We can get into the grid system and go over to Chroma Luma here, and now we can choose which grid we're going to be working with. Changes grid 2 changes to the secondary colors in the grid, primary colors in grid 1. Selecting range allows us to expand or contract a range, and then we can adjust the axis angle. We can adjust the chroma. A lot of control in the Color Warper, and all the controls are here for you to use. Okay, we'll step out. We'll take a look at Qualifier, and then we'll go into the Qualifier pane in Davinci. Now I'm going to select my picker tool, and I'm just going to pick this yellow here, but I'm going to need to see in my highlight what it is I'm selecting. So I'm going to select this orange-yellow range here. And now with my tools, I can get in and I can start adjusting exactly where the center is. I can change the width. I can change the symmetry. I can adjust the high-low of the saturation and the softness, increase the softness. Of course, I can still do all this with my trackpad. I can adjust it with my shuttle. I can do the same thing here. All these controls are available to very quickly make your selection. We can go over to the Qualifier RGB and then click on the RGB controls, and now we have these available to us as well. Drop those out, etc. All sorts of control in the Qualifier. And of course you have all your matte finesses, your clips, radiuses, etc. All these controls have been mapped into the profile. All right, we're going to step back and we're going to go into Window. We're going to open up our window pane in Davinci. We're going to create a window here. Now I can quickly adjust the size here, my aspect ratio, and using the shuttle, you'll find the shuttle is a little more responsive. You can change the size of this and even more control when we get into kind of change the size there, pan it over, tilt it up, and I'm going to increase my softness of this bottom area here. And now, of course, from here I can easily just go into my primaries and start doing some adjustments, raising the image up, doing a color boost, changing the tint. Very quickly, having control just on the Stream Deck and your device. All right, now we'll go down here to Tracker and we'll open up the Tracker pane. I've created a quick mask on this person's head, and of course just selecting track forward. Davinci tracks the image forward. You can track it back as well if you want to. You have your controls here. All your checkboxes are available to you here. Right, now we can get into Magic Mask. I'm going to open up the Magic Mask pane. And then quickly just use the mouse because I'm just going to draw an area I want Magic Mask to calculate. And now I can track and analyze the clip. Once the tracking is done, you can get in and you can control, click Mask Settings, and you have control over denoise, blur radius, clean your blacks, etc. Now we're going to go into blur here, and clicking on the blur for the color pane, we can immediately start applying some blurs and adjusting our radius here. We can increase the amount of blur on our subject. We can unlock so we can just do individual channels, and we can also do some scaling so we can sharpen it back up if we wanted to. All these controls are all available. And of course, you can still use your trackball to adjust or use your shuttle. All right, now we're going to get into key. Pressing key opens up the pane, and we can do things like changing the gain offset to limit the amount of the effect that you have applied. I only have the one node here, so that isn't really going to demonstrate it very well. Sizing. Let's change over to a different shot here. We can get into doing sizing. Let's open the sizing pane. Now we can quickly do some panning, tilting. We can zoom. We can unlock the zoom so we can just change the aspect. We of course can use our trackball for even more dramatic and more responsive action. Same thing with the shuttle. You have a lot of control this way. And of course we have access to the edit sizing, input sizing, output sizing, node sizing, and reference sizing. And that opens up the different panes in Davinci. These will give you the controls for each one of those. So if you wanted to work on output sizing, you click the output sizing to open the pane in Davinci, and then click output sizing to open the controls on your Stream Deck device. And now you have control for all of these. All right. You can also, let's go back to edit sizing. You also very quickly flip your image and perform some crops. Etc. And you can reset. Now the header folder, these will take us directly, if you want to just use these as a navigation tool to get where you want to go inside Davinci, these will open them up for you. Okay, and we have printer lights, and with this we can just immediately start adjusting by using these keys themselves. We're adjusting the printer lights. And the load save memory, self-explanatory. We have a bank of 8 saves and 8 loads. Now we can head into Dolby Vision, and clicking on the Dolby Vision color pane here. Of course, Dolby Vision, you need to have a Dolby license for all these to be active. But once you do, they're all available to you. You can hit lift and immediately start making your lift adjustments, chroma weight, your gain, etc. All these controls are available to you. You can immediately start analyzing your clip. You can get into your secondary trims and opening up the secondary pane. You can adjust your red saturation, cyan, your red hues, etc. They're all available to you there. And of course these controls work the same. Alright, so Dolby Vision is now opened up for you to control with your Stream Deck device. Very simple. Click out. The last thing we're going to go over is our custom area here. And this is special in the sense that it allows you to assign any of these 12 keys to any parameter you like in DaVinci. And I'll show you how this works. Let's go to my next clip here. And I've got a film effect on this clip, so if I open up effects, it's going to show me the film damage parameters that I can adjust on this clip. So I would just take the mouse and I would put it over top of the parameter that I want to control, in this case film blur. I'm going to hold control on my keyboard while I press a custom key, in this case custom key 1. And let's say I want to also do the temperature shift, hold control on the keyboard, hit custom key 2, and let's say we do tilt amount. Hold control on the keyboard, custom key 3. Now, when I press my custom key 1 and start adjusting the values, I'm adjusting the film blur. So I can really increase the film blur. Custom key 2, I can use my trackball if I want to start affecting the color temperature. I can also do it with the Stream Deck device. Or I can use my shuttle to adjust the value. And pressing the 3 key allows me to adjust the tilt amount of the film damage effect. Very quick and easy to assign any parameter you want, and it's going to remember the effect you apply to it. Now I'll show you how you can adjust a few other things with this, but just while we're here, we also have the DaVinci color transform language parameters that are also available here. So if I move down just one clip, I've got a DCTL effect applied to this, and these are already pre-mapped. So the way it works is, depending on whatever DCTL I have loaded, this is going to affect the first, second, third, fourth, fifth, etc. parameter in that list. So right now I've got channel saturation applied to this clip. So by pressing on number 1 is obviously going to allow me to drop my red saturation down. Number 3 is the third parameter. That allows me to raise my red lower threshold. Now if I had, instead of the channel saturation, if I had, say, blackout loaded here, pressing number 1 will then allow me to adjust my blackout point. Number 3 allows me to adjust my softness, etc. So depending on whatever DCTL you have loaded, it's going to adjust the first, second, third, etc. parameter of that effect. All right, so back out to our custom. I want to show you what else you can do with custom. Let's say I'm going to go and work in the edit page with this clip, and I've got the inspector open here. Well, I can assign any of these parameters in the inspector to these custom keys as well. So if I mouse over the Zoom X, hold control on my keyboard, press the 1 key, and I want to work on position, hold control to his position, and then hold control, 3 will be rotation angle. Now when I press on the 1 key, I'm now zooming. Press on 2, I can change my position, go back to 1, zoom it back up the way I want, over to 3, I can rotate with my shuttle, I can rotate with my, now if I do this, I can rotate with my trackball, and I can also rotate with the Stream Deck itself. So you have control over any parts of the inspector that you want to work with, and these custom keys will stay in place as long as you don't overwrite those keys. So if I was to, let's say I want pitch to be number 1 instead of the position or the zoom position I had, I'll go to the hold the control key on my keyboard, press the 1 key, and now instead of zoom X, it is going to, when I press this key, allow me to adjust the pitch. Now if I was to jump to a different clip, this is not clip dependent, I can go over to this clip here, which has a completely different set of default parameters, but if I want to change the pitch of this one, I just press pitch and I can immediately start adjusting it. That assignment is always associated with pitch because that's how I have assigned it. I can go into my Stream Deck. I can also label this pitch so that I remember. And now it's on my device. I always know that no matter what clip I go to, if I select that clip, click on pitch and adjust, I will always be adjusting my pitch. Additionally, if you're working in Fairlight, if I go down to my audio clip here and jump into Fairlight, and I've got my clip selected and I put a modulation in here, for example, I can do the same thing with the VSTs here. So I can just mouse over, say, level, and let's assign this to number 7. Doesn't matter which one, it's up to you to decide where you want to put it. Hold control on the keyboard, press the 7 key, and say I want to change the rate as well. Hold the control key, hold and press number 8. And now by pressing, let's just press play. And now by pressing 7, I can change the level of the modulator. Pressing 8, I can change the rate of the modulation. And you can do this for any variable. You can do this for any variable that you want to load in. Just assign it to this, and that will affect it. So just a couple of little extras for you. I know this is mostly for the color page in Davinci, but you can extend the functionality of the Stream Deck device to control more things in other pages. So that gives you a well-rounded view of everything that we've got loaded in here. Hopefully you'll be able to find ways of incorporating it into your workflow that will help you speed up and make your color sessions go by quicker and get you to your desired images a lot faster. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.